People say that live television is always unpredictable, but that night felt different from the very beginning. The studio lights were bright, the audience was full, and the energy in the air was sharp, like something big was waiting to happen. Keanu Reeves stood backstage, calm as always, dressed in a simple black suit. He never tried to appear important. He never needed to. His presence alone spoke for him. And beside him, preparing her lines with a quiet smile, was Sandra Bullock. Their friendship had lasted many years, built on respect, kindness, and a gentle understanding of each other's hearts. But that night, there was something unspoken between them, something deeper. As the show's host called their names, the crowd erupted in applause. People loved seeing them together. It reminded them of a time when movies felt honest and love stories felt pure. Keanu and Sandra walked out side by side, waving and smiling. But inside, both of them carried emotions they had never fully shared. They sat on the stage couch, lights shining on their faces, the cameras capturing every expression. "So, Keanu, Sandra," the host said softly, "I think everyone here knows you both have one of the most unique bonds in Hollywood. And tonight, we wanted to do something special. We want you to tell us the story of when you first realized you trusted each other." The audience leaned forward. Trust, a powerful word. Keanu took a slow breath. He did not speak quickly. He always thought before he spoke. "I think," he said quietly, "it was during a time when I was not okay." And Sandra saw it. Sandra lowered her eyes for a moment. She remembered. Everyone remembered the tragedy that had shaped Keanu's life, the painful loss, the silence that followed. But few knew how deeply he struggled, how far he disappeared inside himself. "He didn't talk much back then," Sandra said softly, "but he listened. And when you listen, you can hear someone's heart. And I heard his." The host paused. The studio grew quiet. The air felt heavy with meaning. But then something unexpected happened. A woman from the front row suddenly stood up. Her hands were shaking, her eyes full of tears. "Please," she said, "I need to say something to Keanu." Security moved instantly, but Keanu gently lifted his hand, signaling them to stop. "It's okay," he said. The woman stepped closer. Her voice trembled. "You don't know me," she said, "but my brother met you once. He was sick. He was in the hospital, and everyone else was rushing past him. But you sat with him. You talked to him. You held his hand. He said you made him feel like he mattered, even if it was just for a moment." The audience went silent. Even Sandra froze. Keanu did not move. His eyes softened. "What was his name?" he asked gently. "Michael," she whispered. Keanu nodded slowly. "Michael was strong," he said. "I remember." The woman covered her mouth and cried. The host did not know what to say. No one did. Because what just happened was real. There was no script for moments like this. No performance. No show. And as the audience wiped their eyes, the cameras continued filming, capturing raw, honest emotion. But deep inside, something else was happening too. Sandra looked at Keanu with a different expression, something full of understanding and quiet love. She knew this was only the beginning of what would unfold tonight, because there were truths neither of them had spoken. And once truth begins to rise, it does not stop. The night was far from over. The studio lights dimmed a little after the woman returned to her seat, but the room did not return to normal. Something had shifted. The audience no longer felt like they were simply watching a show. They felt like they were witnessing something true and human unfold right in front of them. Sandra looked at Keanu, her eyes soft but filled with depth. She knew how moments tied to pain could open old doors inside him, doors he tried so hard to keep closed. She gently placed her hand on his arm. It was a small touch, easy to miss, but Keanu felt it. He did not look at her right away, but he felt it. The host tried to continue with the show in a light tone, but his voice came out quiet. "That was powerful." He took a slow breath and then looked at them again. "Keanu, Sandra, I think the world knows you both have hearts that carry a lot. But I think tonight, people want to understand more than just your friendship. They want to know how you helped each other through those difficult times." The audience stayed still. No one even coughed. It was as if everyone was holding their breath. Sandra smiled gently. I think helping someone isn't always about fixing something, she said. Sometimes it is just standing with them when the world feels too heavy. Keanu slowly nodded. There was a time, he began, when I didn't want to go to any events. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I didn't want to show up anywhere. But Sandra, she showed up for me anyway. Sandra laughed softly, remembering. I used to call him every morning. I didn't ask him if he wanted to talk. I didn't ask him if he was okay. I just said, I am coming over, open the door. And sometimes he didn't. Sometimes I waited outside. Sometimes we just sat on the floor and didn't say anything. Keanu's voice was quiet but steady, and that meant everything. The crowd felt the weight of those words. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was full of shared memory. But then something happened that no one, not even the producers backstage, was prepared for. The host leaned forward and said, "Is it true that you two once made a promise to each other, something personal?" Keanu and Sandra froze. Not a dramatic freeze, not a shocked freeze, a real, honest, careful stillness. Because the promise was real. And almost no one knew about it. Sandra's single quotes, eyes flickered to Keanu. He looked down for a moment, then back up. "Yes," Sandra said quietly. The audience reacted with a ripple of whispers. Keanu's single quotes voice was almost a whisper. "We promised that if we ever reached a point in our lives where we felt completely alone," he said, "we would find each other, no matter what, no matter where." The room grew still as stone. No laughter, no clapping, no movement, because that was not something said between friends lightly. The host, now visibly emotional, asked softly, "And have you ever needed to call on that promise?" Sandra hesitated. Keanu looked at her, really looked at her. And in that moment, the world seemed to wait. Sandra slowly nodded. Double quotes, "Yes," she said, her voice trembling just a little. "I did." The audience gasped softly. The host leaned forward. Keanu's single quotes, eyes softened. His breath caught. He had no idea Sandra had felt that alone. And the moment she was talking about, he remembered the day clearly. But he had never known that was why. The truth was beginning to unfold. And once truth begins to rise, it does not stop. The audience leaned forward, the studio wrapped in a silence that felt almost sacred. Something intimate was unfolding, something that was never meant to be part of a show script. Sandra took a slow breath, her hands resting gently in her lap. For a moment, she looked less like a movie star and more like a person who had carried a quiet storm inside her. "For a long time, it was after a time in my life when a lot changed," Sandra began. Her tone was steady, but her eyes held emotion. "I felt like the world was moving too fast, and I couldn't keep up. I had success. People thought I was strong, but I felt empty, like I was standing in a crowded room and still completely alone." Keanu listened. Every muscle in his body focused on her. He knew what it meant to feel that kind of loneliness. He had lived inside it for years. Sandra continued, "I remembered our promise. It was something we said when we were younger, something we laughed about, almost. But that night, when I was sitting alone in my kitchen, I realized I needed someone who would understand without asking too many questions, someone who wouldn't try to fix me, someone who would just be." She paused, her voice softening even more. "So I called him." The host blinked. The audience stayed silent. Even the sound crew stopped moving. Keanu breathed in slowly. He remembered that call clearly. He remembered hearing her voice crack, just a little, even though she tried to hide it. He remembered putting on his jacket and leaving his house without a second thought. No explanation, no hesitation. "I came to her house," Keanu said quietly, "and we sat outside on the porch. We didn't talk much. We just watched the sky." Sandra nodded, smiling with the kind of smile that comes from memory, not performance. "And that was enough," she said. "Sometimes being understood doesn't require words." The host looked moved, almost unsure how to continue. "That's a rare thing," he said softly. "A very rare thing." But before anyone could speak again, a sound came through the speakers, a soft, alert tone. The show's producer whispered something urgently into the host's earpiece. Confusion flickered across his face, and then he spoke. "We have someone watching live who has just requested to join us on screen, and it's someone connected to both of you." Keanu and Sandra exchanged glances. Neither had any idea who it could be. The big screen behind them flickered. The audience held its breath. A video call window opened. An older woman appeared. Her hair was gray, her expression tired but warm. She wiped her eyes before speaking. "Hello," she said softly. Keanu recognized her instantly. It was Michael's mother, the boy from the hospital, the boy he sat with, the boy he remembered. Sandra S hand moved instinctively to her chest. The woman took a breath. "I didn't know this was going to happen," she said. "But when I saw my daughter speak earlier, I felt I needed to say something too." The studio grew still again. Every person felt the weight of the moment. "My son always said," the woman continued, voice trembling, "that the day you sat with him was one of the best days of his life. He said you made him feel like he wasn't invisible, that someone cared. And I want to thank you, because some people live a long life and never feel seen. My son felt seen. Because of you." Keanu lowered his head, his hands folded together. His silence was not distance. It was emotion. Sandra placed her hand gently on his back. Steady, grounding, real. And then, slowly, Keanu looked up at the screen and said, barely above a whisper, "He mattered. He still matters." The woman nodded, tears falling. The promise between Keanu and Sandra. The memory of Michael. The night was becoming something none of them expected. And there was more yet to come. The audience was silent, still absorbing the emotional weight of what had just taken place. The screen slowly faded out, leaving only Keanu, Sandra, and the host on stage under soft studio lights. The air felt full, like hearts were speaking louder than words. The host cleared his throat gently. "Keanu, Sandra, I think the world always admired your kindness. But tonight, we're seeing something deeper. We are seeing how you show up for others. And for each other." Keanu looked down at his hands. He had never liked attention when it came to his heart. He did not like being praised. But tonight, he did not try to hide. He let himself feel. Then Sandra spoke, her voice gentle. "People think strength means being tough," she said. "But sometimes strength is being soft. Sometimes it is letting yourself break. Sometimes it is trusting someone enough to say, 'I am not okay.'" Keanu looked at her. And for a moment, the world around them faded. It was just the two of them. Like all the years they had stood beside each other without needing loud words or explanations. The host hesitated for a moment, then asked the question the audience had been waiting for. "Did either of you ever feel something more than friendship?" The room held its breath. It was a question that had followed them for decades. Fans had wondered, media talked, rumors circled. But Keanu and Sandra had always avoided answering. This time, they did in single quotes. Sandra smiled, a slow, warm smile filled with honesty. "I think love comes in many shapes," she said. "And what we have, it is not simple. It is not something you can describe in one word." Keanu nodded. "People want labels. They want answers. But life isn't that clean." He paused, his voice gentle. "There were times when I thought about it." "Yes." The audience reacted with a soft gasp. The host leaned in. "And what stopped you?" he asked. Sandra's single quotes S expression softened into something deep and vulnerable. "Timing," she said. "We were never broken at the same time. When he needed me, I was strong. When I needed him, he was strong. But we were never lost at the same moment. If we were, maybe things would have been different." Keanu's eyes glimmered with emotion. "I think," he said slowly, "that sometimes love is knowing when to hold on and when to let the other person heal." The host didn't push. He let silence speak for them. But then, from the edge of the stage, a voice broke through. "Excuse me, can I say something?" Everyone turned. A young man, perhaps in his 20s, with nervous eyes and shaking hands, stepped forward. He must have been a studio assistant or a crew member, someone who was never supposed to be part of the show. Security moved toward him. But again, Keanu raised his hand gently. "It's okay," he said. The young man swallowed, trying to steady his voice. "I'm sorry. I didn't plan to talk, but I just wanted to say, I grew up watching your movies, and I always thought celebrities lived perfect, shiny lives. But hearing you talk tonight," his voice cracked, it made me realize that even the people who seem strong can be hurting inside. And that maybe it's okay for me to feel like that too. Sandra's eyes softened with warmth. Keanu stood up, walked to the young man, and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're not alone," Keanu said. "None of us are." The young man nodded, tears streaming down his face. The audience began to clap, but it wasn't loud applause. It was soft, warm, human, because this wasn't entertainment anymore. It was healing. The night was changing people, even those who never expected to feel something here. And the most unexpected moment had not yet happened. The studio felt different now. It no longer felt like a stage or a show. It felt like a room where people were finally telling truths they had kept hidden for years. The cameras were still recording, but nobody was thinking about the cameras anymore. Even the audience forgot they were being filmed. They were just present, living inside a moment that felt rare and full of meaning. Keanu walked back to his seat beside Sandra. Their shoulders brushed slightly, and neither of them pulled away. The host looked at them, his voice softer than before, almost cautious, afraid to break the fragile tenderness that filled the air. "You two," he said gently, "have shared a lot tonight, more than anyone expected. But I think there is one more thing the world never knew, something you two have carried quietly, something that changed both of your lives." Keanu and Sandra exchanged a look, a long, slow, understanding look. The kind of look that holds memory, emotion, history. "Yes," Sandra said, her eyes glimmering. "There is." The host hesitated, then asked carefully, "Was there a moment when you almost lost each other?" Sandra's breath caught. Keanu sat still, but the change in his expression was subtle and deep. And then Sandra began to speak. "Years ago," she said, "I made a mistake. I let fear guide me. I was offered a role that would have taken me to another country for almost a year, and I accepted it without telling him. I thought he didn't need me anymore. I thought he was strong again, healed, ready to live without leaning on anyone." She paused, and her voice weakened. "I left without saying goodbye." The audience felt the shock. Even the host leaned forward, eyes wide. Keanu's hands were still, but his eyes spoke everything. The memory lived inside him like a scar. "When she left," Keanu said quietly, "I thought I had done something wrong. I thought I had pushed too hard, maybe leaned too much, maybe cared too much. I didn't ask her to stay. I didn't want to be a weight on her life." He looked down. "So I let her go." The crowd was silent. Some wiped tears. This was not a movie. This was real. Sandra's single quotes voice broke. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I didn't know you felt that way." Keanu looked at her then. Really looked. "And I didn't know you were leaving because you felt empty," he said softly. "I thought you were just ready for something new. Time seemed to slow." "I didn't call," Sandra whispered. "I didn't write. I thought distance would help us both. But it didn't," Keanu said, his voice steady but full of ache. "No," Sandra agreed, her eyes shining. "It didn't." The host spoke softly. "How did you find each other again?" Sandra smiled, but it was the kind of smile that came with tears. "One day," she said, "I was walking outside a small cafe, and I saw him sitting alone at a table, drinking tea. He wasn't expecting anyone. He looked peaceful, quiet, exactly the same. I stopped. I didn't know if I should go to him, but then." He looked up. Keanu's voice softened. "I knew it was her before I even saw her. I just felt it, like something inside me recognized something that had been missing." She laughed softly, wiping her eyes. I sat down. He didn't ask where I had been. He didn't ask why I disappeared. He just said, "I'm glad you're here." Keanu nodded. "Because I was." The audience felt the truth in those simple words. The host took a slow breath. "And now or tonight, sitting here together, do you feel like your promise still stands?" Keanu and Sandra did not look at the host. They looked at each other. Sandra whispered. "Yes," Keanu whispered. "Always." The room fell perfectly silent. And then, suddenly the studio doors opened. Someone unexpected walked in. The studio doors opened slowly, and every head turned. Footsteps echoed in the quiet room. The audience sat absolutely still, unsure if this moment was planned or simply another unexpected truth unfolding in real time. Keanu and Sandra both turned to look, but neither of them spoke. A man stepped forward, older, gentle-looking, holding a folded piece of paper in his hands. His eyes were red, as if he had been crying before he even entered. The host looked confused. The producers in the back signaled for cameras to follow him. Something about him felt familiar, though no one knew why. He walked all the way to the stage, and when he finally lifted his face, the audience seemed to understand that it was Michael's father. The same Michael whose memory had just been honored. The same young man who had said Keanu made him feel seen. Keanu stood up instantly, his eyes soft, full of emotion. Sandra rose beside him, her hand lightly touching his arm for support, grounding him like she always did. The father looked at Keanu, his voice trembling gently. "I wasn't sure if I should come," he said, "but I think tonight was meant to happen like this." Keanu nodded slowly. "I remember him," he said. "I remember his laugh. I remember the way he talked about the stars. He told me he thought the night sky was full of stories." The father smiled through tears. "He used to say that you were one of those stories, that people like you help the stars shine a little brighter." The audience wiped their eyes again. The host lowered his head, unable to speak. Michael's father unfolded the paper in his hand. "My son wrote this before he passed," he said. "I think he wanted you to hear it one day. I didn't know when the right moment would be, but watching you speak tonight, I knew this was the time." Keanu swallowed, his breath shaking just slightly. Sandra held his hand, gently, quietly, no display. "Just real." The father began to read. "If you ever feel alone, remember that someone out there is carrying a piece of your light. You gave me hope when I did not know hope could still exist. If you ever think your kindness is small, trust me, it is not. You changed my life just by sitting beside me." Sometimes love does not need years. Sometimes love happens in a single moment of understanding between strangers. The room felt like it was breathing in one slow, careful heartbeat. Michael's father lowered the paper. "He wanted you to know that your kindness did not disappear into the air. It lived inside him. It lives inside us, and now, it lives here." Keanu stepped forward and embraced the father. Not dramatic, not performative, just a human being sharing a pain, a memory, a love for someone who had been here and was now gone. When they parted, Sandra's eyes were shining, not from sadness, but from something deeper, something like truth. She spoke softly. "What we give to others comes back, sometimes in ways we don't expect." Keanu turned toward the audience. His voice was gentle, honest, unguarded. "We all feel alone sometimes. We all fall. We all break. But if we reach out, even just once, to someone who feels invisible, we change the world, even if only a little." He took Sandra's hand. She did not let go. The audience stood, not in noisy applause, but in quiet, unified respect. It was no longer a show. It was a moment that would remain in hearts. A reminder that kindness matters. A reminder that love does not need labels to be real. A reminder that showing up, even in silence, can save someone. The cameras faded out slowly.